Welcome, everyone, to the Feminine Outliers podcast. Your dose of fun, life advice, and experiences from two African professional women living and working in the Western world. We are your hosts, Zelda
and Choolwe Mandona.
and we're excited to have you here with us. So, welcome back to our 11th episode of the
Woo!
Feminine Outliers. Um, we're glad to be here. We're glad to have you guys here. And Happy New Year. Happy 2024.
Yeah,
I'm hoping this year brings lots of blessings for everyone, and more positives than negatives throughout this year. For us, this is going to be a great year, hopefully, for the podcast. We have a
yeah,
lot of things that we're envisioning, a lot of goals that we have for the future, which we'll be glad, would love you guys to come along the ride with us and grow with us and see what we have in stock. We're excited for what we have um, coming upcoming for the whole entire 2024. So hopefully this is going to be a great year for us as well, and hopefully we continue to be a blessing to others listening to this podcast. Um, so we're back as usual to our unlearning pieces, which we think is very important to at least stop and reflect and figure out what have we unlearned during this past week. So I will go ahead and start with my unlearning piece. I am unlearning that life doesn't have to be perfect. Um,
mm.
so being slightly, I guess, a type A personality. Um,
Slightly.
yeah, I think I would say slightly. I'm not too much on the extreme.
Actually, that's true. You're right. Yeah.
um, but I do like things very much planned and in place, and they feel like there needs to be a structure to it to get things just done exactly how they need to be. For me, it's like everything needs to fall into place in a perfect way that I think it should. But that's a really hard standard to live up to, because I
Mm,
also live up to it at work. I'm like, I feel like I have to be perfect. I have to do everything perfectly. It's a syndrome a lot of physicians have, in which they feel like everything has to be perfect. They need to do everything perfectly, and I understand where it comes from, because I mean we're dealing with human lives, but it's also hard in the sense that it's very hard to be perfect all the time.
mm-hmm.
I don't know if people can be perfect all the, I mean, I don't know if it's something like actually ever being perfect, because we are naturally imperfect human beings, and unfortunately this just comes to the territory because we're imperfect, and just accepting and acknowledging that fact can be a little bit tough. It can be a bitter pill for me to swallow, because I feel like, no, this has to be done perfectly. This has to go perfectly. Yeah, it's no room for error. Things have to work out. But then when things don't work out, which is normal, it happens in life, we tend to be very hard on ourselves because you wanted everything to be perfect. Um, and I'm trying to unlearn that, It's okay for things to be imperfect. The more important thing is, what are you learning from the imperfection or whatever mistakes or whatever errors are being made, rather
Mm,
than trying to make sure everything happens exactly the way you envision what perfect looks like. Just because it's a lot. It's a lot of pressure to put on yourself to have everything done in a perfect manner. And I feel like it's a lot of unnecessary pressure. And this year, I'm not trying to put unnecessary pressure on myself. Like, no. So that means I might just have to learn how to deal with things being imperfect and not going exactly the way I want them to go. But such is life, I guess.
yeah. Oh, that's a good one, Zell. And I was just thinking, do we even know what the definition of perfection is, because what we might
Mm.
think perfect is imperfect to another person, if you know what I
Uh,
mean.
that's true. I guess in a sense, what you're saying is what's perfect to you might not be perfect to someone else. So I guess it's you're saying it's more of an individual thing as to however you define perfection. If it's that's a good one to
Mm,
think about.
yeah. I mean, because I don't know if I am the same. I don't know if I'm a slightly type A. I mean, first of all, if I'm defined as a type A, I'll be so surprised. But I don't know whether it's because of my extroversion, my kind of personality. Um, but I would say I have maybe type A tendencies. Shout out to all the type A. That we're not coming after you. We're just trying to describe how we think and do things. Because the reason why I asked that question is, what's the definition of perfection? Is because I am the person that, for example, if we're going to go on a trip, I am the planner because I
Mm-hmm.
just like seeing things being done in order, or I think about the experience that I'm going to have with my friends or family in advance. And I
Right.
realized that a lot of my, friends or family don't have that mindset. So my idea of perfection, because if I was organizing the whole trip myself, like there's a certain way that everything should go. But even just being the person that's like, oh, I hope we don't forget, the water or the food, because my friend is probably not thinking that, and then I'm thinking that, and so I already see the value that I bring in my social circles because I'm very planner oriented. And so I
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're probably the same way, where you maybe in your own world you're trying to get to a better, higher state, but just when you hang out with your friends, just even doing something small that you might think, oh, I could do even more, is just enough, right? Um, so I think that's why I'm leading with the idea that maybe even perfection is one-sided. So yeah,
That's food for thought for sure.
yeah, but a good one though. I do
Mm-hmm.
agree. And just to note, imagine if we were trying to be quote unquote perfect with our podcast. I don't think we would be on our 11th episode.
Oh yeah, we definitely wouldn't have made it.
With the number of glitches and things going on, um and just stuff that was happening even in our last episode with the background noise, if anyone has even noticed. But we pushed forward, we published, we released, it's out there. So yeah, it's an enemy of progress, perfection, I would say.
That's true. What are you unlearning this week, Charlie?
So, you know, what I'm unlearning is similar to you, especially going into this year. Um, I am
Mm-hmm.
unlearning, and let me get this straight because I mix up my unlearning learning pieces. But I am I am unlearning that you have to give people your time and your energy, because if not, they will be offended or they'll get hurt. Um, and you know what I mean? Like it's taken me a while to realize that you don't have to do that. Like because I have interacted with people where they'll be talking to me and I'll say, "Well, why don't you just tell this person this?" And then the response is, I just don't want them to get offended, or I don't want them to be hurt." And then I don't know what it is, but over time I've realized, like, how did we learn that to show love or to show up for a person we have to sacrifice ourselves? Like I just don't I like it's just kind of clicked, because it's like, I'm hurting myself to comfort another person. And then we say it's love instead of being more honest to say, this is hurting me. And in a way,
Hmm.
I'm being inauthentic by telling you, by not telling you, or whatever it might be. So just sort of making that switch to realize that maybe there's a better way we could compromise as opposed to making assumptions like, okay, this person is going to get hurt or this person is going to be offended. Um, and so I should sacrifice myself. Um, and yeah, and just going forward, it just means seems much easier, I guess, just telling the truth and being like, okay, um, I'm gonna tell you this. How you process it, that's on you. I wish you all the best. If it, but maybe I should even be more kinder. Maybe I should say, if it's hurtful or if it's offensive, we can talk about it. We can communicate. But just the idea of sacrificing myself so that a person doesn't get offended or hurt, I just feel like it's, I don't know, it just feels like a waste of energy or time that could be better spent in understanding differences and things like that. So,
Hmm. Yeah, that's. Do you think that comes from people pleasing tendencies? Because if you
yeah,
if you
yes.
feel like you have to sacrifice yourself to please someone, I mean, maybe underneath it all, you're feeling like you need to please someone. Um, which I think a lot of people have people pleasing tendencies. But that whole thing of sacrificing to please or to please others or to try not to offend others is something I definitely struggled with in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a time and a place for it. There's certain occasions every now and then that it's fine to do that, particularly if it's someone who you care about or who's you hold close to your heart. There's certain people you can do it for, but there's a lot of people you don't have to do it for. And I think that's one thing I've learned in having the discernment as to who I can do that for and who I can't do that for. Because I
Mm,
have done that. I have done that in the past, and I got burnt.
yeah.
And it took me getting burnt to realize, hey, it's okay to help someone out, or it's okay to try not to offend someone. But then at some point, you have to also think of yourself. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
if it involves too much sacrificing on your end, and it's not something that you're willing to do or can do, I mean, you have to put yourself first and be like, sorry, but I have to put myself first and I can't do this. Because I realize like a lot of people in general, I mean, most people in this world are selfish. That's, I think we're naturally inclined to be selfish and think of ourselves. And I think that's a protective mechanism
Yeah.
for humans. So if you're someone who's naturally more empathetic, because I feel like I'm an empath, and you're
Mm,
kind of person who views the world in a sense that, oh, I like to treat others how I want to be treated and things like that. The problem is a lot of people don't think like that,
yeah.
and you can easily get burned. So you have to also take a step back and be like, no, I also have to think of myself. And yes,
Mm-hmm.
you might get offended, but I also have to consider my own
Survival.
well-being.
Yeah.
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 No, that's I like that. I like the idea of discernment and realizing that it's not it in terms of going into the extreme of where it's like don't ever make a sacrifice, but learn to whom you're giving that sacrifice and maybe the reason why, the intention behind that sacrifice. And yeah, just I like that. That's a more realistic and healthy approach than just saying I'm not going to sacrifice. Um, but I think for the most part, it's where I'm coming from, as you rightly put it, is that there's already people are wired to also survive, and so just going above and beyond without thinking through is unnecessary and could be detrimental, right, to my health, or just my energy, and losing time and energy. So I get that. So yeah, that's my learning piece.
That was a good and learning piece.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so that was great. So we are going to start this episode. I mean, no, we're going to start. We're going to continue with the main topic of this episode, which is reflecting on the past year,
Mm,
um, which I think is so important. It's the beginning of the year. As people make New Year's resolutions or you start the new year, you have to reflect on the past year in order to just help you move forward for the next year. So we talked about New Year's resolutions last episode. I guess this time the goal is to talk about what really was behind those New Year's resolutions. So, what happened in the past year that influenced our New Year's resolution? So, just reflecting on life in general, which is something I think we all should do. So, Choolwe, you can go ahead and start and let us know, what are you reflecting on this past year?
yeah, it's funny when you proposed this topic. In my head, I was like, Zell, like we are in 2024, 2023 is the past. Like, let's just leave it behind. And I was
Lol.
like, yeah, and we have to now talk about reflections from 2023. But then after a while, I gave it some thought and I was like, no, wait, it does make sense to look back, because I know we talked about New Year's resolutions, and my head was like, why are we going back to 2023? But a part of me realized that it does make sense to go back to 2023 because one, you can repeat the things you don't want to happen in 2024, and then also just kind of seeing and just, I guess, applauding, or rather praising and celebrating successes is also a good thing, like to kind of see like, I
Mm-hmm.
see. So yeah, so no, I fully support this topic now. um so reflecting on 2023, the first thing that comes to my mind, one thing that I did, is letting go of structure, and just looking, exploring my identity rather. So what do I mean by that? I have to break it down into simple terms. So initially, I thought of pursuing another master's degree, and I think Zale, you know about this, where I was hoping I could learn a little bit more about social innovation, which is just something I was interested in because it involves people, it involves creating. So I love creating, I love people. So I thought, why not go back to school and get
Mm-hmm.
another master's in that? And I think the reason I was trying to do that was because I was like, of course, education helps with your career, or may elevate my profile or my standing. Um, but I then decided, no, I'm not going to go that route. And just really, I wanted to just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to step back and really understand for myself what I really enjoy. Like, what problems do I want to solve? What are my values? Um, and just really get to know me, and then and get to know my strengths, and then
Mm-hmm.
from there build upon that. So I felt like a master's degree has already got a set curriculum. So, like I was going to study, I was going to read these books or whatever, however the program was set up, and then probably read, even memorize, and then type up an essay or do a dissertation and all of that. And then I was like, is that really at this moment in time going to help me grow and understand who I am? So I just decided to trust myself and invest in getting to know who I am, by just going for the things that I wanted, knowing that not everyone will support it, because it's so easy to just say, hey, I'm going to do a master's, and then everyone's like, oh, definitely go ahead, do it, because education is power, and it is. But I was like, is this something I need to do? So I just learned, to just follow my instincts, follow like what do I naturally gravitate. And
Mm.
funny enough, what came out of it was focusing on this podcast. So
Yay.
I know, right? And focusing on the podcast and getting to a point, like we said, that this is our 11th episode, which is very exciting, and just enjoying, providing good content that hopefully people are learning from, and just sharing our experiences. And also wanting to increase empowerment among minorities, even in my workplace, and just interacting with people that come from a background like myself and seeing how they see themselves in the future. So
Mhm.
I've definitely grown in my leadership in these areas, and I'm really excited. Um, and so if I decide to go back into a structured environment, like, going back to school, I'm a little bit more closer in understanding which areas I should focus on, instead of just
Right.
saying, you know what I mean? Yeah, instead of just saying like, oh, I'm going to choose this master's program or whatever program just because I'm thinking it's going to help me, but really coming from a place where I'm passionate, I like it, I enjoy it, and I can probably see the impact I can make in the future. So, yeah, that's one.
um, that's a nice one. I guess that's kind of an intersection of what is it, career ish kind of reflection.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
so I can pivot off that and talk about career wise, reflecting on this past year. I graduated from being a resident physician to an attending physician in the middle of the
Woo!
year. And it's
Shout out.
been, it's been, I mean, one, I have to say it's something to be proud of. Um,
Definitely.
because when I think about the fact that I actually made it through residency, oh my goodness.
COVID, you've made it through the COVID pandemic.
Right? I made it through all that nonsense. Like, when I think about the spending, hours in these COVID patients' rooms, trying to
Mm,
prevent them from getting intubated. There's so many rapid responses, med calls that were called on these patients. The 24-hour shifts, particularly in the ICU. OMG. The night shift in the ICU
mm,
when you're by yourself and handling all these patients and you're like, what the hell? What am I doing? Um, when I think about all that, they were really stressful times, particularly when you are
mm,
on, like, I think the most stressful times for me were the night ICU shifts, simply because you're dealing with very sick patients and you're the only one there. I mean, yes, the attending physician is a call away, but you're the only one in house. And there was a lot of stresses there. So when I think back to it, I'm like, wow, wait a minute. When June came for graduation, I was like so proud of myself.
yeah.
I'm so proud of myself for making it and uh, and being positive. I mean, granted, I had a great support system in the hospital. For example, shout out to Foodie Squad because
Booty
it
squad.
they made residency very bearable. We were
Mm,
like looking out for each other and things like that. So now that I became an attending physician, uh, it's really. It's like, wow. It's kind of shocking. Like, wow, now I can sign my own orders. I don't have to send them to someone to sign them. I just click sign and they go through. That I'm
Right.
the end point now for people, not the middle point as a resident physician. And it's been great. It's I always have to remind myself like it's something to be proud of. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's very hard to be proud of it in the sense that because I'm a new attending physician, it tends to be rather more stressful than enjoyable
Mm-hmm.
sometimes because you're now adapting to this new level of responsibility. Like beforehand, I could be like, if I miss something or if something happens, the attending physician should catch it or it's their license. Now it's
Mm-hmm.
my license. And it
Yeah.
ends and stops with me. So just being adapting to this new level of responsibility has been a bit tough. So sometimes it can really put me down and really be like, I get so, I mean, it just gets stressful. But then I have to remind myself, hey, you actually finished residency, which the hours in residency were worse. I mean, I have to say
Mm.
that for sure. I don't have to do a 24-hour shift here unless I want to. Um, so just reminding myself that I've actually come from far. I finished residency. And so as an attending physician, yes, it'll take me time to settle into being an attending physician, but it will get better and um, I will get more efficient, as
Mm.
we were
Yep.
talking about earlier, which is something that I've been working on. So just reflecting on that, it's giving me hope for this year because I am now 4 months into being an attending physician, and I'm like, career wise, hopefully that can take off. I can be more efficient, getting stuff done on time, so that my life can low key get back to normal. Because as you know, sometimes I bring my notes home, depending on what
Mm.
day it is, and it's like it's been hard when I'm at work because sometimes like I feel like the week I'm working, that's all I can really process is work because it tends to be, it's 7 days, 12 hours a week. So,
Yeah.
I mean, 7 days, 12 hours a day. But
Oh yeah. Yeah. 2 hours a day. Wow.
hours a day.
Yeah.
Uh, but but I'm trying to be more grateful because I think when I actually reflect on where I've come from, I realized this was actually the dream to
Yeah.
be an attending physician. So yes, there's growing pains, but I'm low key, well, maybe high key, living the dream. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
No.
here.
Yeah. Oh no, congrats. I have to say congratulations again. I sort of feel part of the journey, or at least witnessing the journey, because ever since we've known each other since pre-med, like in at Miami.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And like you're like, yeah, I want to do medicine. You're doing your pre-med classes, and then we split after graduation, and then you traveled, as we have talked about, went to different parts of the world to finish up your medical degree. So I just feel like, man, it's been quite a journey, and I know in all of that time I've been moving around, switch jobs, and stuff has been happening, switch continents as well. But it's just like, no, it's worth celebrating.
Mhm.
Um, just achieving that. And don't you even sometimes, I don't know what you do when someone, I'm sure you might get people who are like, I don't know what you call yourself in the hospital, whether it's Dr. Zell, Dr. Zelda, Dr. Wasau, but are there moments where you just like pause and be like, oh my goodness, that's me?
Yeah. I mean, when they're like, hey dog, or this dog, hey dog, I'm just like, oh wait, they're referring to me. Yeah, because as a resident physician, you're not the top, you're middle man.
Mm,
Uh but now here you're like top and you're just like, oh wait, they're referring to me. And it's funny
mm,
because I clearly am one of the young ones. That doesn't
yeah.
help. So it's so funny, in the whole, because you're hearing people say, hey dog, and this is like someone like 20, 30 years older than you.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, that is so cool though. That is so cool. Shout out to all medical doctors out there and people graduating. Good stuff.
I
Good
know.
stuff.
What else are you reflecting on this year, Joey?
um, so the other thing I'm reflecting on is the time I spent in Zambia last year. I decided to go visit my family
Mm,
and just visit and just see what's up, like what's been going on, and just reconnect with family and friends. And I actually had a good time. And first of all, the first thing that hit me was just the African sun. Shout out to the African sun. I know it's the same sun, but the African sun, or at least when the sun shines in Africa, it's a different situation. It's
right?
warm. I know, right? Like it was, first of all, it was t-shirt weather, even though it was getting into, this is May, so it's supposed to be getting into the winter season. But for me, it felt like t-shirt weather every day, all day. And I just felt my skin, my skin cells just being so happy. I don't know. There's something about the sun, right?
Hmm.
Um, that I just enjoyed that. Um, but more importantly, I would say, is reconnecting with my family, and just being in a space where I could just have a conversation, chat with them, be involved in their day to day. And then I took a trip to see my grandmother, who lives, I want to say 5-6 hours away from Lusaka, which is the capital. And also just getting to see her, and obviously she's getting older, but just to see that vitality in her and that excitement, um, it felt really good. Um, and I think we talked about how do we keep ties with family and friends abroad. And one of the things that I came to appreciate is, um, just celebrating family and friends without judgment,
Mm,
because no family is perfect at all. And, you know, as we are talking about unlearning, for example, unlearning issues, some of it stemmed from just growing up, So, but what I liked about this trip was I was able to interact with my family and my friends with no judgment, just observing, enjoying their time, and also coming from a place of gratitude. So, um, yeah, it was a good time, and I'm very, very grateful that it went really well in terms of being able to see everybody I could at that time.
hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big one because I know you hadn't been to Zambia for um, some time.
A very long time. Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly. But it was worth it. It was definitely worth it. And I feel more connected to my family. At least I have a more better idea of their reality. And
Right.
understanding of, yeah, of what's going on in their lives. So which is really good.
That's that's a good one. Um,
And yourself?
hmm, maybe I'll take the personal route. So I feel like this year has been a year of self growth.
Mm,
So I feel like I've really been more purposeful about being a better person, whatever that entails. So,
mm,
for example, reading more, it might sound cliche, but like self help books, like one of my favorite is Atomic Habits or The Subtle Art of
mm,
Not Giving a Fuck or something like that. Things that actually help with character development.
mm,
I think it's so important to be emotionally mature and emotionally aware. And that's something that I have really worked on this past year. And I've really been enjoying the process of learning more, trying to be more efficient. I've been opened up to this world of all these amazing books out there that can be very helpful and very inspiring to help you grow as a person. And it's
Mm-hmm.
funny because I hit this stage in which I'm like, that's what I'm interested in. Like, I'm not going to lie. I am no longer interested in reading nonfiction books. I used to love reading nonfiction books as a child. And as a teen, reading books was my thing. Like Nancy Drew, um,
I
all
remember this
that.
book. Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
I remember the Chinua Achebe, Things Are Falling Apart.
Oh yeah.
Um, I read a lot of books. I can't remember, but at this point in time in my life, I don't have time to read nonfiction books. I mean, I'd much rather watch anime or something like that if I
Anime.
to
Yeah, I
get
know that's your
my
favorite.
to get my nonfiction stuff.
It's
But
faster.
oh, to get my fiction stuff, not nonfiction, to get my fiction stuff. Um,
Right.
but uh, when it comes to books, I usually tend to focus on books that are actually I'm gaining knowledge from, be it
Mm,
self care, self help books, whether it's financial books. Uh, I just have to be getting something out of them, and I've really been focusing on that this past year, and it's really been helping with character development, emotional maturity, and all that. And also, I've also been more aware of my like physical health journey in the sense that I trying to be more purposeful about exercising, eating better, eating healthy. Um, and it's like I came to the realization that one, if I don't do something, nothing will change. Like it's on me. It's not
mm,
on someone else. So if I want a certain body, I want certain health, I want my labs to be perfect. It's on me. I've
mm,
really been getting to that point of enjoying this health journey. Of course, it's still a journey. I'm still trying to get my exercise, like schedule routine in. As you know, it's been a struggle, particularly on the weeks that I'm working.
yeah.
But I'm still like, I've grown this past year, and to the point that like this year I'm like, I am certain I this is something I have to get down, and like I really have to take care of myself because it's just me. No one else is going to be able to do that. And if
Mm,
I can do my part to prevent as much illness as possible, that's very important because I work with, I mean, being in the hospital, I see people who are so sick every day.
mm,
And you of course there's some things kind of unavoidable or you out of your control, but there's a
yeah.
lot of lifestyle diseases that people come in with that I'm like, no, you could have prevented this from happening. So in my head I'm like, no, if it's a lifestyle disease, you better not have it, you better take care of yourself. So this
Mm,
past year has been just me really trying to better myself, be basically I'm working on becoming the woman I wanted to be. When
ooh, I
what
love
I envision, I
that.
envision a fit lady who's very purposeful, very organized with her time, is busy, um, but I'm also working on a lot of things in my life and that are going to improve my life. For example, one of the other things is that still is under self is realizing that, I mean, this is funny because I just started my new job, but I have to also like work, quote unquote, work for myself or do
Mm,
things for myself. Like I can't just be spend my whole entire life and energy working for someone else. Like
mm,
being in a, because they obviously want you to work as hard as you can to further their business, their goals, and everything. I've got to also work on what does Zelda want to do? Do you want to start a business? Do you want to do this? That's why the
mm,
podcast, for example, has been a really great thing because
mm,
I really do enjoy this. And I'm like, this is me working on. doing something that I also enjoy for myself, not just going to work and being an employee. So that's, part
Okay.
of the whole self growth that's been happening, just encompassing all of that. Yeah.
Mm, wow. I love that, Zell. I really do. And I think that's something that's common between, the two of us is that
Hmm.
self growth component. And this is the reason why we started the podcast because
Right.
we would spend what, 4 to 6 hours on talking about stuff to help ourselves. And I will not forget the day I slept at like 6 a.m. because we were just talking all night. And it wasn't like we were talking about movies or talking about other people. We were literally talking about ourselves and how we can better and how we could better ourselves. So I'm so excited, and I think the other thing that I'm excited about for you is that you're now, practicing doctor, and you have more time. Because I remember when
Hmm.
you were a resident, it was like trying to meet up was a bit tricky because of your long hours. But I'm just excited to see all the work that we put in, all the books that we read, and just like how it's just going to manifest
Hmm.
in your life, in my life, and just seeing that, right? So that is so exciting. I'm excited.
It is.
I am so excited. And it's funny because that is another reflection of mine, similar to yours, is I'm starting to realize, and for me now, because I have had more time to myself in the working space, I'm starting to find myself reading more leadership oriented books. Just because, like, for example, this podcast is a very good example. Even for me, it's being a good platform to sort of practice my planning, scheduling, doing stuff like that. But even
Hmm.
now, I'm just thinking even beyond that. Like, how do you lead people? How do you influence people in the right way? Not like just for likes, but in a way that we can actually help people. Um, and so realizing that I have to do a lot of things for myself, as you were saying, and even to
Hmm.
myself. Um, so, one big example, for example, is emotional management. Um, and I know we have talked about this in general because, and the more I learn about emotional management, the more I
Hmm.
realize I'm like, whoa, like, how are people living out there? Like, how are people self regulating if they even are regulating, right?
That's a question. That's the big question.
No, it's just, yeah, I'm just like realizing like, wow, it really is something that it needs to be considered in leadership. Um and so even like, for example, in our frustration in setting up this podcast, if we just said, no, let's give up, this is hard, it's fine, it's okay, we're gonna move on. But even controlling our how we experience our failures is a big
Hmm.
part of leadership. And so I'm just excited about that. And um, so reflecting about last year, I think starting the podcast was something I would say I'm very proud that we did it. Like, I'm very proud that we started. Um,
Hmm.
and now it's set in motion and definitely changing my life and my whole schedule on how I spend it. So
That's, yeah. I have to mention it again. We are proud of starting this podcast.
I know, I know, and definitely, as you said, Zoe, I think you said something around wanting to provide good content. So we genuinely are passionate about doing this podcast. And actually, we're so passionate about doing this podcast that we have to warm up with having a conversation and then do the podcast. So it's not something like, oh, we're just gonna get the podcast done because we just wanna. No, we actually enjoy doing this podcast, and we hope you guys listening to us enjoy it as well.
I hope they do.
I know.
Ah,
Um, ooh, I have another one.
go
And
ahead.
maybe you might relate to this because you are in this position. Another one that I had to do last year was defining I guess I would say defining my values, but also defining the kind of place and community that I would like to be a part of. So, um, because obviously just moving to the UK, it's, you kind of have to find your feet somehow. And it's exciting in the sense that you can, you're literally starting afresh and nobody knows you. And whatever story you can tell when you move to a new place is like, you can give anyone any narrative. Um, Hopefully you don't lie. But you can tell a new story and you can define yourself differently. Um,
Hmm.
and so I had to think that for myself last year and say, what kind of people or what environments um, do I want to be in? And so I was even, praying about it, if people who believe in God. But for me, I was like, I really wanted to be around a certain group of people. So, like, people that are active, people that are creative, and people who are just excited about life, about the future, about the present, the future. Um, and so being very intentional about where I was going to live, intentional about my friends, um, and the environment I'm in. So, for example, I did join a gym that's like a wellness, it's also like a wellness facility. And I really do enjoy it because it has people from, I guess, around everywhere.
Hmm.
But you know and the thing about it is that it's very community centric, so I love going into the gym and people say hi to me, or I start chatting with someone and they give me tips on something, and I was just like, yes, this is the space I want to be in. um like people who just are going after it, and I can be inspired by them and things like that. So that's another thing that I've come to realize, and environment is just so important. So I feel like putting all of that together, I felt like the atmosphere was right for me to even, do this podcast or do other things and start creating. So that was,
Mm.
I'm very glad I made changes to my, environment to suit what's best, I guess, for me to grow in, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good one. That's one that I don't have much to say on it because it's something I am trying to do. At least
Mm,
now, at least because ever since I switched environment, I mean, I had my people I'd hang out with, and now it's like, oh, you're in a new place, new
mm,
people, need to do new things. So that's something that at least over the past few years, I mean, not the past few years, over the last few months, uh, it's definitely something I wanted to work on, but I guess I just didn't really work on it as much ever since I moved out here. But it's something that's important. It's like kind of like finding your people, which we know we're going
mm,
to talk about in another episode. So that's something that I think definitely it's funny because I never had to think about it until I left. I moved out in August. because
Mm.
my all my people were around. It was
Yeah, I
just we were
know.
all we like I had my community, so it's like it's definitely something that this past year I didn't do much of. I mean, not past year, in the past few months that I moved here. But again, I'm
Mm.
settling in, so I was giving myself grace to do it. And like, I also part of the problem is my friends are still not that far away, so
I know. Yeah, it's
still
true.
we still meet up like on a week's off. But yeah, um, I would say one other reflection that I've been working on is financially wise.
Mm.
So I'm just now on this journey of financial education with my goal of being financially free.
Mm.
Hopefully within the next 10 years. I want my money to work for me. I don't want to work for money.
Mm.
And so when I started to realize that, again, back to the books, I started investing in time in reading books, watching stuff on YouTube, listening to different podcasts that talk about it, because I realized that at least finances, I don't, it's probably not the same in every household, but in general, in African households, they don't really talk as much about money.
Yeah.
Um, and all I knew growing up is what I witnessed and from my parents and family, extra other family members.
Mm-hmm.
So financially wise, I really want to be financially independent. I want to be the retired person who doesn't have to depend on anyone, who has her own money in the account. So my loved ones don't have to worry about at least taking care of me financially. And also for
Mm-hmm.
me, it gives me the freedom to do what I want to do in life. Because
Mm.
I
Yeah.
love traveling and
Yeah.
I want to be able to travel without thinking about how much money it's going to cost,
Mm-hmm.
or things like that. So I really have been very purposeful about learning a lot about finances and really trying to put my best foot forward. Have I been perfect about everything? No. But again, it's important to learn and from our mistakes and get better. But I am very much on that financial freedom journey. So I'm really proud of myself for getting to this point in which I am so passionate about it, because I think it's
Mm-hmm.
so important. I'm not gonna lie, a few years ago would I have been thinking about this? No, not
No.
really. I mean, not
Yeah.
really, but
I get it.
now I'm like, you've got to get your ducks in a row. You've got to think about it. Start preparing, do your best, put your best foot forward so that you can hopefully, make it.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is to live the life I want to live. I like the soft life. I like luxury
Yeah.
and all that. But I need to be able to do it and do it in a smart way.
Yeah.
I need to be financially smart. And I'm proud with the strides I've made this past year. And I am really hopeful for the strides I will make in this upcoming year.
Mm. Amen to that. Yeah, no, that's a really good one. And the thing about it is, isn't it interesting that money is such a big thing in our lives? Unless you're off
Hmm.
the grid. Shout out to those who are off the grid. I don't know which part of the world, but um, they're probably living their best life without thinking about it. But you bring up a point where it's like we didn't grow up talking about money and even the way it works, and the platforms and the ways to utilize it, um, and so it's just that's a really good one. I like that, and how you can set yourself up early to be financially free, as you said. Um,
Hmm.
and even if it's not necessarily being financially free, but just being smart with it, um because there's something about money and emotions,
Hmm.
um And I think we're gonna have a separate episode on this. I'm really excited about, like, I think black tax is what we said we're gonna talk about, and so we're
Hmm.
gonna, there's just something about it, and it'll be interesting to discuss that. So kind of getting, so it's almost like, as I was saying, with emotional management as well, like how bringing in money to it. How are you using your money to work for you? So that's a good point. I like that.
It's it's a yeah, it's a important point in general. So I'm really glad that we've been able to look back, reflect on what we have done,
Yeah,
uh, or how the year has been, because it's so important. I mean, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly.
exactly.
um,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of, I mean, things have happened, and so this has been good to just think about it and be like, oh, I actually made it this far. It's really encouraging and motivating. And I encourage everyone out there to take a step back and also reflect on what happened. Because
Mm-hmm.
as I said, I feel like reflection is the first step before you start thinking about your plans and what. Reflect about how things went, what went wrong, what went right, then create a plan from there. Because if you
Mm,
don't think about that and just create a plan, you're at risk of repeating the things that went wrong and your previous mistakes. So
true.
uh, I definitely feel like reflecting is so important. So if you guys, would let us know what are some of your 2023 reflections. Let us know. We're really, would love to hear from you. Would love to make it as interactive as possible. So let us know just email us at thefeminineoutliers@gmail.com. Would
That's
love
right.
to hear from you. Uh, we would love to see, hear, read what you have to say, and learn from each other. So that's how you reach out to us. Again, thefeminineoutliers@gmail.com. Um, Other than that, we're excited to be back. I mean, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but we did have a week break for
Yes.
New Year's. But we are excited to be back, and excited for this next upcoming, couple of weeks, couple of months, and a new exciting thing we're going to be starting at the end of each month, roughly at the end of each month.
Yeah.
We will be doing a career series. So just so that you guys know, I'm a medical doctor. I'm a physician, internal medicine physician. I'm a hospitalist. And Choolwe is an engineer.
Yeah. Water
Um,
engineer. Yep.
exactly. But she did her degree in chemical engineering, so she's super smart.
You're super smart.
so, so we're gonna be delving into Korea as well during this whole entire year. So we're really excited for this new series that's gonna be there at the end of each month. But other than that, guys, thanks for listening. We really hope that this episode has been a blessing, one way or the other.
Yeah.
And we look forward to the next episode. So until next time, have fun, live large, and don't be afraid to be an outlier.
Thank
Have
you
a good
guys.
week.